Hey everyone, Chris here, the RC Geek coming to you from the shop, and this is my finale episode in my Freewing Tomcat Refinish series. It took way longer to get here than I had anticipated, but I'm so happy with how the airplane came out, how it looks. I love the low-vis camo on the Tomcat and with all of the weathering that we did in my previous episode. Man, it really looks fantastic in flight. Very convincing and reminiscent of the full-scale airplane. And so I thought in this video, to finish it all up, we would talk through some of the final modifications that I made to the airframe. There are a couple things that I changed up to make the airframe look a bit more scale. And then also we'll talk through in detail the programming, because I've done a lot of the custom programming with the full span flaps, using the ailerons more as a turning spoiler. And so we'll talk in detail about that, and then we'll wrap it up, talk through how it flies, give you guys a flight video. And so yeah, let's get into it. We'll talk through the modifications first, and then the programming, and finish it up with flying. So let's go. Now, with respect to the final modifications that I made to the airframe, I was never really happy with the looks of the stock Freewing nose strut. And so somebody had actually recommended using the Freewing T45 nose strut. And it is a perfect look on the F-14 Tomcat. It is awesome. There is one drawback to it, however, you know, the Tomcat is a heavier airframe than the Freewing T45. And so that plunger shaft that is used is extremely soft aluminum, and so it can be prone to bending. Now, what I ended up doing is I removed that shaft, put a butane torch to it, heated it up until it started to change color slightly, and then I just dropped it in some water to try and harden that up. And that did help. Still has bent a little bit because I did have a rough off-field rollout one time, but otherwise it has held up much better than had I not tempered it the way that I did. The other thing is that I had originally 3D printed some glove pylons that mimicked the Freewing shape that they provided. Well, I did not like how the airplane flew with those pylons. It never really felt locked in when I was flying with those, and so removing them, it locked in super true. So what I ended up doing is redesigning the pylons, and discovered that the Freewing shape isn't all that scale. So we made a more scale-like shape to the pylons. I 3D printed those, put them on here, and I found that these are completely transparent to the airframe. It doesn't notice that they're on there at all. That doesn't change the flight characteristics like the other shape did. And so I was really happy with that, because what they do is they hide the tires when they retract. And so yeah, I have those available on my website if you're looking for those. But yeah, it worked out great and didn't change the aerodynamics at all. So I was really happy with that. All right, so wanted to talk through the programming a bit more in detail. I never really did that previously. Now, first things first, you know, the airplane does fly really well stock. Don't feel like you have to do this custom programming. But for me, being the scale geek that I am, I like to use the controls in a similar manner to how the full scale would have used them. And so let's talk through the programming a bit in detail. So the first things first, you know, we got to come in here and establish the proper aircraft configuration. Okay, so I've got Elevon A, which is the left and right tails, and then we have the standard tail. So that's just one servo on the rudder. And so then from there, when we look in the monitor here, we have throttle, right aileron, left aileron, rudder, gear, flap, aux2, aux3, and so on. And so when I move the aileron stick, you can see both tails are moving, and aux2 and aux3 are moving and alternating, okay? And so then also when I hit the flaps, you can see that aux2 and aux3 are also moving in combination with the flap, and that's a result of the mixing that I've done. So the aux2 and aux3 is where the ailerons live. To do that, go back to the dashboard, we go into model adjust, want to plug in the servos, get your flaps, ailerons operating all in the direction that they should be going, and then you look towards the mixing. All right, so to accomplish the spoiler-on effect on the ailerons as well as the flap effect, you have to do individual mixes for each function on each aileron. So the simplest thing to do is to start with the flaps. So if we start with this mix here, you can see that it's a flap to aux to mix. All right, on the rate we've only got 100% on one side, and then your offset, which is how this is the adjustment you make to get it to line up with the flaps how you want. So when I hit the flap switch, this adjustment on the offset is what's going to get you that, get the aileron to match with the flap. Now, we go back, we've got to do that on the left and the right ailerons, so that means aux 2 and aux 3. And then for the aileron, it's a similar situation. We've got an aileron to aux to mix. And in this case, I only want them to operate trailing edge up. The rate here at minus 43%, that adjustment is what gets me that maximum travel on the aileron itself. And then I have this active, so down here you can see my flight mode switch. That's actually my swing wing switch, which I have up here. And you can see that I have it active when the wings are out, but then when I sweep the wings, you can see this switch over, and this is grayed out, which means that when I move the ailerons, and you can see here, the outboard ailerons don't move. Okay, so that's how you lock out the ailerons with the wing sweep. Flight mode 1. One other thing, in the dual rates, I have my dual rate switch for the aileron assigned to my swing wing switch, so that when I hit the swing wing, my aileron rates automatically change. All right, and so that's important because without that, the airplane gets really sensitive in roll if you don't reduce those rates. All right, and so that is most of it in terms of the mixing and all of that. There are a couple other items. Let's go into the flaps system. When you do the full span flaps, it requires a considerable amount of up elevator trim. And so I've got almost a 30% up elevator mix here with the full flap. All right, keep that in mind. That is important. Otherwise, the airplane will nose down on you pretty substantially. The other thing is, I have set up a gyro in the airplane. It really responds well to it in the wing swept position especially. And so I've just got an AS3X in here, the 10 channel receiver. And so in terms of my gains, I've got them off, and then I've got it set up so I can turn them on. And I've got 50% in roll, 55% in pitch, and 40% in yaw. That feels pretty good. That's primarily it on the programming. It's not super extensive really, but knowing which knobs to turn, how to make it work for you is kind of the hardest part, right? So in terms of the controls, everything is the same as what I provided previously. With the gyro, I did find that with the wing swept, I did have to increase the rate a little bit. Now, flying the airplane, it's really hard to beat that low vis gray from the 1990s that the Tomcats were painted. It has such a great look, especially when it's all dirtied up. And flying around with all that weathering and whatnot, the airplane is very convincing to watch. And so I have the Freewing 9-blade Outrunner fans in here, which come in the Freewing A10. If I were to do it over again, I actually would use the 36mm in-runner setups instead because I get a little bit more power from it. With the refinish, there is some weight added. This is actually the first airframe that I have done this to where I do actually feel the weight. But that being said, it flies fantastically. It's got plenty of power. It would be nice if I had the 36mm in runners in there just to have a little bit more punch, but there's nothing wrong with how the airplane flies as it is. It's got nice big verticals, rolling maneuvers. It's very representative of the full scale, which is a result of that flight control setup that I've got in here. It's fun to perform rolling maneuvers while the wings are sweeping. And so if you're going to do a rolling maneuver while sweeping the wings, it's important to understand that while the wings sweep slowly, that rate change happens instantaneously. And so what I like to do is roll the airplane while extending the wings because that gives me better roll control through the maneuver. And so to do that, you pitch the airplane up, hit your wing switch, and then you initiate your roll. So in order to maintain a constant roll rate, you actually have to slowly increase your roll input congruently with how the wings are sweeping out. And so that's a fun maneuver. It does take some practice. It's one of the characteristic maneuvers they used to perform at air shows. One of the challenges that I did have was just getting the airplane in a landing mode that I was happy with. So the key is, especially with the full span flaps, is to get that nose up and keep a constant attitude all the way down to the ground, and then just use your throttle to control your descent. Otherwise, if you try and glide it in, man, it comes in way hot and you end up way past your mark. It just took me some time to feel out where that right attitude and throttle combination was. You do have to understand that with the full span flaps, if you horse on the elevator, the airplane will tip stall on you, and so that's another reason why you just keep constant attitude, fly the airplane all the way down to the ground, you're going to avoid that as well. And if you have issues with that, just go back to the standard flap setup. There's nothing wrong with that. It works really well. And so yeah, let's take this out to the field. We'll give you guys a flight, and we'll come back and we'll wrap this up.
Flight mode 2. One minute. Flight mode 2.
I've got his phone.
All right, guys, that's it for this series. I'm really happy with how this airplane came out. Love having a Tomcat in the hangar to fly. And so, yeah, it's one of my top 3 favorite airplanes of all time. So having something like this makes me happy. And so, yeah, I really hope you found this whole series helpful, guys. I've linked it all in the comments, and I've also got them on my website as well at theRCGeek.com, and a whole bunch of other content there as well. And so, yeah, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to follow along on social media at the RC Geek. Subscribe, and until next time, I'll see you at the field.